My parents dropped thousands on my sister's lavish wedding, but when it was my day, they didn't even show. I called them, and their icy response shattered me. Marry your plumber. We refused to be humiliated. I just laughed and texted them one photo of my husband. Suddenly, their phones wouldn't stop ringing. I thought nothing could break me more than watching my tiny, fragile son fight for his life in the NICU. But then I discovered my own family, my blood, not only abandoned us in our darkest hour, but actively spread cruel lies about it. The betrayal? It felt like a punch to the gut, making me wonder, what the hell happened next? My name is Gianna, and at 32, I never imagined my first experience with motherhood would be such an agonizing battle. Before Noah, my life felt pretty complete. I loved my marketing career, helping small businesses bloom, and every morning, I woke up genuinely excited about the creative challenges ahead. My husband, David, and I had been married 3 beautiful years, building a cozy life in our Seattle apartment with our rescue cat, Luna. We had our routines, our favorite brunch spots, and our dreams of a family. But that someday took longer and was far more painful than we ever anticipated. For 2 heartbreaking years, we tried to conceive, only to face 3 agonizing miscarriages. Each loss etched a deeper scar on our souls, yet we clung to each other, navigating the grief as best we could. Doctors ran tests, prescribed medications, monitored everything, but their diagnosis was always the same: unexplained infertility. It felt like a non-answer, a life sentence. One night, after our 3rd loss, David looked at me, his eyes full of tenderness. Gianna, he suggested softly, maybe we should take a break. Not from trying to have a baby, but from making it our entire focus. Let's travel, rediscover us. The people we were before this became everything. He was right. We'd become so consumed by the goal of having a baby that we'd forgotten how to simply be. So, we planned a trip to Maine. 2 weeks of hiking, fresh seafood, and reconnecting. For the first time in months, I slept through the night without the crushing weight of anxiety dreams. And it was there, amidst the peace and calm, that I conceived Noah. We wouldn't know it for another 3 weeks, when my period was late and I hesitantly took a test, trying desperately not to hope too much. When those 2 pink lines appeared, I couldn't believe it. I took 3 more tests, just to be sure, before calling David at work. I'm pregnant, I whispered, as if saying it too loudly might make it vanish. The silence on the other end worried me, until I heard a muffled sob. I'm coming home, was all he said. My relationship with my extended family, though, had always been complicated. My mom died from breast cancer when I was 15, leaving a gaping void no one could truly fill. My dad remarried 2 years later to Eleanor, a kind but distant woman. We were cordial, but the mother-daughter bond one craved was never there. My mother's sisters, Aunt Betty and Aunt Karen, took starkly different approaches to their niece. Aunt Betty genuinely tried, inviting me for sleepovers, teaching me my mom's recipes. But Aunt Karen? That was another story entirely. As my mother's older sister, she seemed to resent me, though I never understood why. Perhaps I reminded her too much of my mom, or maybe she just found fault in everyone. You're still carrying those extra pounds, I see, she'd comment at family gatherings. Or, when I was your age, I already owned a house, not just renting. Nothing I did was ever enough. Her own children, my cousins, were always presented as the gold standard I should aspire to reach. When I announced my pregnancy to the family during a Sunday dinner at my father's house, the reactions were, at best, mixed. Well, it's about time. You're not getting any younger, Aunt Karen remarked, sipping her wine. Let's hope you carry this one to term. My father offered a brief congratulation before swiftly redirecting the conversation to my stepbrother's recent promotion. Only my younger brother, Jake, showed genuine, unbridled excitement, peppering me with questions about due dates and names. Don't let them get to you, David whispered as we drove home. We're going to be amazing parents, with or without their support. I tried to believe him, but their lukewarm response left me feeling hollow, a chilling premonition of what was to come. Throughout my first trimester, I sent ultrasound photos to our family group chat. My father would respond with a generic thumbs-up emoji. Aunt Betty occasionally asked how I was feeling. Aunt Karen either ignored the messages or simply changed the subject, redirecting to some trivial update about her own life. By my second trimester, I had stopped sharing updates with anyone but Jake, who always responded with enthusiastic texts and calls. When we learned we were having a boy, Jake immediately sent a tiny baseball glove to our apartment with a note for my future MVP nephew. He was the only one who truly made me feel seen, made me feel like our baby was celebrated. As my belly grew, so did my excitement and, yes, my anxiety. David and I attended birthing classes, decorated the nursery with such love, and made plans for my maternity leave. Everything seemed to be progressing normally. At 20 weeks, our anatomy scan showed a perfectly healthy baby boy, 10 fingers, 10 toes, all organs developing properly. "This is the one," the obstetrician assured us with a beaming smile. "Everything looks perfect." I wanted to believe her more than anything. Each week that passed felt like a small victory, each prenatal appointment a hurdle cleared. I devoured every pregnancy book, followed all the advice about nutrition and exercise, and talked to my baby constantly. "You are so loved already," I'd tell him every night, my hands cradling my growing bump. "We can't wait to meet you, but take your time. Grow strong first." Little did I know, those words would haunt me. The first sign that something was terribly wrong came during week 27. I woke up at 3 a.m. with a dull backache that simply wouldn't go away, no matter how I positioned myself. By breakfast, I noticed a pinkish discharge that sent alarm bells shrieking in my head. "I think we should call the doctor," I told David, trying desperately to keep my voice steady. We were at the hospital within the hour, where the nurse hooked me up to monitors that confirmed my worst fear. I was having contractions. The doctor's face grew serious as she examined me. "You're in preterm labor," she explained. "We need to try to stop it." What followed was a terrifying blur of medication, steroids to help mature the baby's lungs, and constant, agonizing monitoring. For 3 days, I lay in that hospital bed, terrified and praying for the contractions to stop. David rarely left my side, sleeping in the uncomfortable hospital chair, holding my hand through the worst of it. On the 4th day, despite every medical intervention, my water broke. "We can't delay any longer," the doctor informed us, her voice grave. "We need to deliver the baby now." I was rushed to the operating room for an emergency C-section. The fear was overwhelming. At 28 weeks, I knew our baby's chances were better than they would have been even a decade ago, but still, he was coming into the world dangerously early. Under the harsh operating room lights, I felt the strange tugging sensation as they worked to deliver my son. The absence of a cry when they pulled him out sent ice through my veins. "Is he okay?" I asked desperately, unable to see beyond the surgical drape. "He's breathing," the doctor answered, but her tone lacked the reassurance I desperately needed. "The NICU team is with him now." David kissed my forehead, torn between staying with me and following our son. "Go with him," I urged, my voice raw. "Don't let him be alone." It was hours before I could see Noah. Still groggy from the anesthesia and in agonizing pain from the surgery, I was wheeled into the neonatal intensive care unit. Nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared me for the sight of my tiny son, just 2 pounds, 3 ounces, in an incubator connected to more tubes and wires than I could count. His skin was nearly translucent, his eyes fused shut, his chest rising and falling with the relentless help of a ventilator. "He's so small," I whispered, pressing my hand against the plastic barrier that separated us. "But he's a fighter," the nurse assured me. "His vitals are stable for now." The neonatologist was kind, but devastatingly honest about the long road ahead. "The next 72 hours are critical," he explained. "Then we take it day by day. He will likely be here until close to his original due date, if all goes well." That meant 12 weeks in the hospital. 12 weeks of gut-wrenching uncertainty. 12 weeks before we could even dream of taking our son home. I tried to absorb this information through a haze of physical pain and emotional shock. That night, alone in my recovery room while David went home to shower and grab essentials, I took out my phone. I sent a message to our family group chat. Noah David was born today at 28 weeks. He weighs 2 pounds, 3 ounces. We're in the NICU and would appreciate your prayers and support during this difficult time. I attached a photo of his tiny hand wrapped around my finger, the only picture I'd been able to take so far. Then I waited, hoping for messages of support, offers of help, anything to make me feel less alone in this terrifying new reality. The first response came from Aunt Karen. No words of concern for her great-nephew fighting for his life. No offers of help for her niece recovering from major surgery. Instead, she sent 5 photos from her Hawaii vacation with the caption, "Aloha from Maui." The weather is perfect. I stared at my phone in stunned disbelief. Surely, she had seen my message. Surely, she understood the gravity of what we were going through. I waited for someone else to respond, my father, Aunt Betty, any of my cousins, to acknowledge what had happened. Nothing. Jake was the only one who called immediately. "I'm so sorry, G. Is there anything I can do? Do you need me to come?" I broke down then, sobbing into the phone. "He's so tiny, Jake. I'm so scared." "I'll try to get a flight out this weekend," he promised. "Have Mom and Dad been by yet?" I hesitated. No one has responded except Aunt Karen with vacation photos. The silence on the other end spoke volumes. "That's messed up," he finally said. "I'll call Dad and let him know how serious this is." But even after Jake's intervention, the responses were tepid at best. My father texted, "Sorry to hear about the complications. Let us know if you need anything." No visit. No call. Aunt Betty sent a brief message, praying for the little one. These hospitals work miracles these days. It was as if they couldn't grasp the magnitude of what was happening, or worse, they didn't care enough to try. David was furious when he returned, and I showed him the messages. How can they be so callous? This is their flesh and blood fighting for his life. Maybe they don't understand how serious it is, I suggested, trying to make excuses for them even as my heart broke. "I'll call them," David offered. But I shook my head. "If they wanted to be here, they would be," I said, the realization settling like a stone in my chest. "We need to focus on Noah now. He's all that matters." As the days bled into weeks, no one from my family came to visit. No flowers. No care packages. Not even a proper phone call. Just occasional text messages asking for updates, to which I would respond with Noah's latest weight or a small milestone, like opening his eyes or coming off the ventilator onto CPAP. My sister's neighbor's grandson was a preemie and now he plays football. Aunt Karen wrote in response to one of my updates, as if that generic reassurance was all I needed. I stopped expecting anything from them. Instead, I poured all my energy into being there for Noah, learning to care for him within the confines of the NICU rules, pumping breast milk every 3 hours around the clock, and trying to heal from my own surgery. Life in the NICU quickly developed its own strange rhythm. I would arrive at 8 a.m., just in time for Noah's care time, when the nurses would check his vitals, change his diaper, and help me with kangaroo care, the skin-to-skin contact that was one of the few ways I could truly mother my son. The NICU was a foreign world with its own language and rules. The constant beeping of monitors, the whoosh of ventilators, the hushed conversations between medical staff. I learned to interpret the numbers on Noah's monitors, to know which alarms were routine and which meant trouble. I could recite his daily stats like a sports announcer: weight, oxygen saturation, heart rate, feeding volume. The nurses became my guides in this new terrain. Maria, with 20 years of experience, taught me how to touch Noah without overwhelming his sensitive nervous system. Jen showed me how to carefully change his diaper around the wires and tubes. Thomas, the night nurse with gentle hands, always had updates ready when I called at 2 a.m., unable to sleep for worrying. "You're doing great, Mama," they would tell me, a reassurance I clung to when everything else felt like it was spiraling out of control. Between care times, I would sit by Noah's incubator for hours, reading books aloud or just talking to him in a soft voice. I told him about the home waiting for him, about his dad who loved him so much, about the cat who would be his first friend. Sometimes I would sing lullabies, not caring who heard my off-key voice. Every 3 hours, I would retreat to the pumping room, a small space with 3 curtain stations where NICU mothers expressed milk for their fragile babies. It was there that I met other women living the same nightmare. Sarah's twins had been born at 26 weeks. Jessica's daughter had a congenital heart defect. Monica's son had Down syndrome and a bowel obstruction. Different circumstances had brought us to the same room, our bodies producing milk for babies we could barely hold. My mother-in-law said I should just formula feed since he can't breastfeed yet. Anyway, Jessica confided one afternoon as we sat with our pumps. She doesn't understand why I'm putting myself through this. My sister asked if I was still stuck at the hospital all day, Monica added, rolling her eyes, as if I'm here by choice. These women understood what my family couldn't, the profound grief of leaving the hospital without your baby, the physical pain of recovering from birth while spending 12 hours a day in an uncomfortable chair, the emotional whiplash of celebrating the smallest victories while living in constant fear of setbacks. We formed a text group, checking in on each other's babies, offering support when the journey got too overwhelming. They became my NICU family, bound by an experience I would never have chosen but couldn't navigate alone. David tried his best to be present, but reality set in quickly. His company offered only 2 weeks of paternity leave, which he had to take immediately after Noah's birth. After that, he returned to work, coming to the hospital in the evenings and on weekends. I hate leaving you both, he confessed on his first day back. It feels wrong. We need your health insurance now more than ever, I reminded him. And someone has to earn money. The bills aren't going to stop because our lives did. The financial reality was becoming clearer each day. Even with insurance, the cost of a NICU stay was astronomical. Every day added thousands of dollars to our medical debt. My own unpaid maternity leave had started sooner than planned, and with Noah's extended hospital stay, I was facing the possibility of having to return to work before he even came home. David and I would meet in the hospital cafeteria for dinner, picking at bland food while discussing logistics. Who would take the morning shift at the hospital? Had the insurance approved the latest procedure? Could we negotiate with my boss for a longer leave? Should we consider taking out a loan to cover expenses? These practical conversations kept us functioning, but they left little room for processing the emotional trauma we were experiencing. At night, alone in our bed while David slept on the pull-out couch to give me space to recover, I would sob silently into my pillow, overwhelmed by fear, guilt, and loneliness. The absence of my family's support became more conspicuous with each passing day. I would scroll through social media during the long hours by Noah's bedside and see updates from their lives. My father and stepmother at a concert. Aunt Karen posting about a family dinner where I hadn't been invited. Cousins gathering for a weekend at someone's lake house. Life was continuing for them as if nothing had changed, while my world had completely shattered and reformed around the NICU. Each photo, each casual update about their normal lives, felt like a deliberate reminder of my exclusion, of how little they cared about Noah's fight or my struggle. I tried to push down the hurt and focus on what mattered. Noah was making slow but steady progress. He had been moved from the ventilator to CPAP, a less invasive form of breathing support. He was tolerating small amounts of my breast milk through a feeding tube. His weight had increased to 2 pounds, 8 ounces by the end of the second week. He's doing everything we want to see, Dr. Patterson, the neonatologist, assured me during rounds. But remember, this is a marathon, not a sprint. I settled into the NICU routine, finding small comforts where I could. The reclining chair by Noah's incubator became my second home. I kept a journal of his daily progress, documenting each milestone, no matter how small. First time opening his eyes, first time wrapping his entire hand around my fingertip, first time receiving a full feeding without setting off alarms. These tiny victories sustained me through the darkest moments, the times when the isolation threatened to overwhelm everything else. In the absence of my family's support, I created a new support system, medical professionals, fellow NICU parents, and the few friends who made the effort to check in regularly. By the 4th week, Noah had graduated to an open crib, maintaining his own body temperature, a significant milestone for a preemie. He still needed oxygen support and feeding assistance, but he was growing stronger every day. His features were becoming more defined, less alien, and more like the baby I had imagined during my pregnancy. He has your nose, David remarked one evening as we both hovered over the crib, a rare moment when we were both able to be at the hospital together. And your chin, I added gently, stroking Noah's cheek with one finger. He is perfect. These were the moments that made the endless hours at the hospital worthwhile. These were the memories I recorded carefully, knowing that someday I would tell Noah the story of his difficult beginning, and I wanted to remember not just the struggle, but also the triumph. On the 28th day of Noah's life, I had settled into the familiar routine. Morning rounds had gone well. Noah was up to 3 pounds exactly, a weight that felt miraculous considering where we had started. He was taking more of his feedings by mouth now, a promising sign that the feeding tube might soon be removed. He might be ready for his first proper bath today, Maria, one of the nurses, suggested during the morning care time. Would you like to try? It was a milestone I had been looking forward to. The nurses had been giving Noah sponge baths since birth, but this would be different, a chance to truly care for my baby in a way that felt normal. Definitely, I agreed. After the afternoon care time, with a few hours to spare, I decided to take a proper lunch break. The hospital cafeteria wasn't known for its culinary excellence, but it offered a change of scenery from the NICU and a chance to call David with the good news about the bath. I found a quiet corner table and unwrapped my sandwich. As I pulled out my phone to call David, I noticed something strange. The screen was filled with notifications, 62 missed calls, 28 text messages, 9 voicemails. Most were from Jake, with timestamps indicating he had been trying to reach me for hours. My heart began to race as I opened the most recent text. Gianna, answer your phone. This is bad. With trembling fingers, I called him back. He answered on the first ring. Where have you been? His voice was tight with tension. I've been trying to reach you all morning. I'm in the NICU, as always. My phone was on silent. The fear in his voice made my stomach clench. What's going on? There was a heavy pause before Jake spoke again. It's Aunt Betty. She was in a car accident early this morning. It's pretty serious, G. They don't know if she's going to make it. The world seemed to tilt sideways. Aunt Betty, the one relative, besides Jake, who had shown me any kindness over the years. Aunt Betty, who at least had sent messages acknowledging Noah's birth, even if she hadn't visited. What happened? I managed to ask. Drunk driver ran a red light, hit her driver's side. She has internal bleeding and a head injury. They've taken her into surgery. Jake's voice cracked slightly. Everyone is at Memorial Hospital now. Dad asked why you aren't here yet. A bitter laugh escaped my throat before I could stop it. He asked why I'm not there. Are you serious, Jake? What do you mean? I took a shaky breath. I have been sitting with my premature son in the NICU for 4 weeks, and not one person from our family has bothered to visit. Not Dad. Not Eleanor. Not Aunt Karen. Not any of the cousins. No one except you has even called to check on us. The silence on the other end of the line told me Jake was processing this information. That can't be right, he finally said. They said they were visiting regularly. Aunt Karen told everyone at Sunday dinner last week that she had been bringing you meals and sitting with Noah so you could rest. It was like a literal punch to the gut. What? She said what? She's been telling everyone that she visits you 3 times a week, that she brings home-cooked meals to the hospital, that she sits with Noah while you nap or shower. Jake's voice had shifted from confused to utterly enraged. She even showed Dad pictures of Noah that she claimed to have taken herself. My mind raced to make sense of this. The only pictures I've ever sent to the family chat are the ones I took. She must have saved them and pretended they were hers. What about the others? Dad? Aunt Betty, before the accident. No one, Jake. No one has been here. My voice broke as the full weight of the betrayal hit me. They have all known where we are. They have all known how serious this is. And no one came. I could hear Jake's breathing change, could practically feel his anger through the phone. I knew something was off. I kept asking why they weren't talking about Noah more. And Karen would always say that you wanted privacy, that you were tired of everyone asking for updates. That's the opposite of the truth. I've been sending updates to the family chat every few days, and most of the time no one even responds. I haven't been seeing those messages. I wonder if she created a separate group without me. There was the sound of movement, as if Jake was pacing. This is unbelievable. I wiped away tears, aware that people at nearby tables were starting to notice my distress. I can't leave Noah to come to Memorial. He's still too fragile, and I need to be here for his care times. I understand. I'll go. But gee, this is not over. They cannot get away with treating you and Noah like this. After hanging up with Jake, I sat frozen in the cafeteria chair, my sandwich untouched. The magnitude of what I had just learned was almost too much to process. Not only had my family abandoned me during the most traumatic experience of my life, but Aunt Karen had actively lied about it, pretending to be supportive while leaving me to struggle alone. Why? What possible reason could she have for such cruelty? And how had everyone else accepted her lies without question, never bothering to call me directly or verify her claims? The memory of all those nights I had cried myself to sleep, wondering why my family didn't care enough to visit, now took on a new dimension of betrayal. This wasn't simple neglect. This was deliberate deception. I checked the time, realizing I needed to get back to the NICU for Noah's afternoon care. Despite the emotional bombshell, my son's needs came first. I would have to process this revelation later. As I walked back to the NICU, my phone buzzed with a text from Jake. Just arrived at Memorial. Everyone is here. We'll update you on Aunt Betty soon, and I am going to get to the bottom of this Karen situation. I took a deep breath and pushed through the NICU doors, determined to be present for Noah, despite the storm raging inside me. He deserved a mother who could put aside her own pain to care for him. And that was exactly what I intended to be. 2 days after the revelation about Aunt Karen's lies, Jake arrived at the NICU. His face was a mixture of exhaustion and determination. He had been splitting his time between the 2 hospitals, checking on Aunt Betty, who remained in critical condition but had survived her surgery, and coming to meet his nephew for the first time. "Oh my God," he whispered when he first saw Noah in his open crib. "He's so tiny. 3 pounds, 2 ounces, as of this morning," I said proudly, up almost a full pound from his birth weight. Jake's eyes filled with tears as he carefully touched Noah's hand with one finger. "He's perfect, G. Absolutely perfect." The nurse showed Jake how to properly sanitize his hands and arms before helping him settle into the recliner for his first kangaroo care session with his nephew. I watched as my brother's face transformed from nervous to utterly awestruck as the nurse placed Noah against his chest. "I can feel his heart beating," Jake said softly. "It's so fast." "That's normal for preemies," I assured him. "Everything about them works overtime." For an hour, Jake sat motionless, afraid to disturb the tiny baby sleeping on his chest. I took photos, wanting to document this moment of pure love amidst all the chaos. When the nurse came to put Noah back in his crib for his next assessment, Jake looked physically pained to let him go. "I can't believe they haven't seen him," he said, once Noah was settled. "I can't believe they haven't been here for you." The anger in his voice matched what had been building in me since our phone call. "What have you found out?" I asked, leading him to the NICU family room where we could talk privately. "It's worse than we thought," Jake said, running a hand through his hair. "Karen has been systematically isolating you from the family for months, maybe years. After you announced your pregnancy, she started telling everyone that you wanted space, that you were stressed and needed minimal contact." I shook my head in disbelief. That makes no sense. Why would anyone believe that? Because she did it gradually and she's convincing. She would say things like, "I just talked to Gianna yesterday and she asked for some privacy right now," or "Gianna is overwhelmed with visitors. She needs a break." Jake sighed. "But no one thought to call me directly? You know how our family is. Communication has never been our strong suit since Mom died. Everyone defers to Karen because she's the oldest and she's positioned herself as the family matriarch." He pulled out his phone and showed me screenshots of a separate family chat group that I wasn't part of. In it were messages from Karen, updating everyone on Noah's condition, sharing the photos I had sent to the original group chat, but acting as if she had taken them herself and constantly implying that I was too fragile for visitors or calls. She even told Dad that you specifically asked him not to come because seeing him would remind you too much of Mom and you couldn't handle that emotional stress on top of everything else, Jake added. That is absolute nonsense. I said, my voice rising enough that a passing nurse gave us a concerned look. I lowered my tone. I would have given anything to have family support these past weeks. I know, Jake squeezed my hand. And now they know too. When I got to Memorial and everyone asked why you weren't there, I told them the truth, that you had been alone in the NICU for a month, that no one had visited, and that you had no idea about Aunt Betty because no one had bothered to maintain real contact with you. How did they react? Dad was in shock. He kept saying that Karen had told him you were getting all the support you needed, that you were doing well. Aunt Betty's daughter, Lisa, was furious. She said Karen had told her specifically not to visit you because the NICU had strict visitor limitations, and your spots were all taken by Dad and Karen. Each new lie felt like another betrayal. People I had grown up with, people who should have known better, had allowed one person to dictate their relationship with me during the most vulnerable time of my life. I want to confront her, I said, a new resolve hardening within me. I want everyone to hear what she has done. Jake nodded. I thought you might say that. I've set up a video call for this evening. Everyone will be in Aunt Betty's hospital room, and we can connect you from here. They all want to see Noah and hear directly from you. The thought of facing everyone, of laying bare the truth of my isolation, was both terrifying and necessary. For Noah's sake and for my own, I needed to reclaim my voice in my family. That evening, with Noah sleeping peacefully in his crib beside me, Jake called from Aunt Betty's hospital room. On my screen appeared the faces of my family gathered around a laptop. My father, looking older than I remembered. Eleanor, her hand on his shoulder. Cousins Lisa and Mark, Aunt Betty's children. And there, at the edge of the frame, Aunt Karen, her expression carefully neutral. Gianna, my father began, his voice thick with emotion. Jake tells us we have been misled about your situation. Before I could respond, I angled my phone to show them Noah. This is your grandson, Dad. Your nephew, Lisa and Mark. Your great-nephew, Aunt Karen. He's 4 weeks old today, and none of you have met him. There was a collective intake of breath as they saw Noah for the first time, so small in his crib, with monitors attached to his tiny body. Oh, Gianna, Lisa whispered. He's beautiful. Karen told us the NICU was restricting visitors due to infection risks, my father said, his eyes not leaving Noah's image on the screen. She said only parents and grandparents were allowed, and that you had asked her to go in my place because I remind you too much of your mother. I switched the camera back to my face. That is a lie. The NICU allows 4 designated visitors per baby. David and I are 2. Jake is now the 3rd. We have been saving the 4th spot, hoping someone from our family would want it. Karen said you were doing well, that you had plenty of support, Mark added, his expression troubled. I have been alone, I said, no longer able to keep the hurt from my voice. David has to work to keep our insurance. I have been sitting in this hospital for 12 hours a day, watching my son fight for his life, with no family support except for Jake's phone calls. I have been pumping breast milk every 3 hours around the clock, recovering from a C-section, dealing with medical decisions and insurance paperwork, all while terrified that my baby might not survive. And not one of you called me directly to check in. The silence that followed was heavy with shame. Every face on the screen, except for Karen's, showed shock and remorse. Why? I finally asked, looking directly at Karen. Why would you lie to everyone? Why would you isolate me when I needed family the most? Karen's face remained impassive. I was protecting the family from your drama. You have always been attention-seeking, just like your mother. Always the victim. Always needing everyone to drop everything for your crisis. The cruelty of her words left me momentarily speechless. How dare you? Jake's voice came through, hard with anger. Gianna's son is in the NICU. This is not drama or attention-seeking. I visited once, Karen continued, as if Jake had not spoken, the first week. You were sleeping, so I didn't wake you. I saw enough to know that the nurses had everything under control. There was no need for the entire family to upend their lives. You never visited, I said, finding my voice again. Not once. If you had, any of the nurses would remember you, and they would have logged you in as a visitor in our record. Are you calling me a liar? Karen's voice rose defensively. Yes, I said simply. I am calling you a liar. You lied to everyone about visiting me. You lied about me asking for privacy. You lied about the NICU policies. And you stole the photos I sent to the family chat to pretend you had taken them yourself. The faces on my screen turned to Karen, who was now visibly flustered. I was trying to spare everyone the constant medical updates and drama, she insisted. No one needs to hear every detail about every ounce the baby gains or every test result. That was not your decision to make, my father said, his voice sharper than I had heard it in years. That was for us to decide. You took that choice away from all of us. What followed was painful but necessary. One by one, family members shared what Karen had told them about me, about Noah, about the situation. The web of lies was so extensive that it took nearly an hour to unravel it all. Throughout, Karen alternated between defensive justifications and tearful claims that she had only been trying to help. By the end of the call, boundaries had been drawn. My father and Eleanor would be coming to meet Noah the following day. Lisa and Mark would visit when they could leave Aunt Betty's side. And Karen had been told, in no uncertain terms, that her manipulation would no longer be tolerated. I want to be very clear, I said before ending the call. I am focused on Noah right now. His health and well-being are my priority. I do not have the emotional energy to maintain relationships with people who cannot respect me or who bring negativity into our lives. Moving forward, I will choose carefully who is part of our family circle. Blood relation alone is not enough. With those words, I disconnected the call, emotionally drained, but strangely lighter. As if a burden I had been carrying for years had finally been set down. The morning after the video call, I arrived at the NICU to find my father and Eleanor already there, having come early to speak with the doctors before I arrived. Seeing my father standing outside Noah's room, his face etched with a combination of awe and regret as he peered through the window at his tiny grandson, unlocked something in my chest. "Dad," I said softly, approaching him. He turned, and for the first time since my mother died, I saw him cry openly. "Gianna, I am so sorry. I should have known better. I should have called you directly." I wanted to maintain my anger, to hold him accountable for his absence. But seeing his genuine remorse weakened my resolve. "You should have," I agreed. "But you're here now." Eleanor stepped forward, her usual reserved demeanor replaced with earnest concern. "We brought some things for you and Noah," she said, indicating a large bag at her feet. "The nurses told us what might be helpful." Inside the bag were soft, preemie clothes, a journal specifically designed for NICU parents to track milestones, a gift card for the hospital cafe, comfortable slippers for me, and several books to read to Noah. "The nurses also gave us thorough instructions on how to visit properly," my father added. "We've been here for an hour, learning the protocols and getting our visitor badges." Their effort was a starting point, a gesture that acknowledged the depth of their previous neglect. Together, we entered Noah's room where a nurse was checking his vital signs. "Good morning, little man," she said cheerfully to Noah. "You have visitors today." After washing their hands and arms according to NICU protocol, my father and Eleanor were introduced to their grandson properly. I watched as my stoic father transformed before my eyes, his expression softening as the nurse explained how to touch Noah gently. "He knows his mother's voice already," the nurse told them. "Talk to him. Let him learn your voices, too." My father leaned close to the crib. "Hello, Noah," he said, his voice uncharacteristically gentle. "I'm your grandpa. I'm sorry I'm late to the party, but I promise I'll be here from now on." That promise marked the beginning of a new chapter in our family story. Over the next few weeks, as Noah continued to grow stronger, my support system expanded. My father visited every other day, often bringing food for David and me, or offering to sit with Noah so I could take a proper shower or nap in the family room. Lisa and Mark, once Aunt Betty stabilized, became regular visitors as well, marveling at Noah's progress and bringing small gifts each time they came. Even some of my cousins, once they understood they had been manipulated by Karen, reached out with messages of support and offers to help. But the most surprising development came when Aunt Betty finally awakened, recovering from her accident. She asked to video call with me from her hospital room. "I should have known something was wrong," she said, her face still bruised from the accident. Karen has always been jealous of your mother and, by extension, you. I let her take control of family communications because it seemed easier, but I never imagined she would go this far. Why was she jealous of my mother? I asked, a question that had lingered for years. Aunt Betty sighed. Your mother was always the favorite, the one who got the opportunities and praise. Karen was the responsible one, the one who stayed close to home and took care of our parents. But your mother was the one everyone adored. When she died so young, leaving behind a daughter who looks just like her, I think it was too much for Karen to bear. This explanation didn't excuse Karen's behavior, but it offered context for a lifetime of subtle cruelty that had culminated in this ultimate betrayal. Understanding the root of her actions didn't heal the wound, but it helped me recognize that her behavior had never truly been about me at all. As for Karen herself, she had been effectively ostracized from the family's inner circle. After the truth came to light, no one was willing to trust her as they once had. She made one attempt to visit the NICU, showing up unannounced with a teddy bear for Noah. But I had already instructed the nurses not to add her to our approved visitor list. I'm his great-aunt, she protested when stopped at the NICU entrance. I have every right to see him. No, you do not, I told her firmly when the nurse called me to the front desk. You forfeited that right when you lied to our entire family and left me to face this alone. The only people who have a right to see Noah are those who have proven they can be trusted to support us. She left in tears, later sending a lengthy email justifying her actions and positioning herself as the victim of a family conspiracy. I deleted it without responding. Some relationships were not worth salvaging. Not when they consistently brought pain rather than comfort. With the family drama somewhat settled, I could focus more fully on Noah and his development. By his 6th week, he had reached 4 pounds and was taking most of his feedings by mouth, major milestones that brought us closer to the possibility of going home. The NICU nurses, who had become like family, celebrated each of his accomplishments with us. Sophia, in particular, had taken a special interest in our case. I had a preemie too, 20 years ago, she confided one night during a quiet shift. 26 weeks, 1 pound, 10 ounces. He's in college now, studying engineering. These little fighters grow up to do amazing things. Her words were the exact encouragement I needed during the lowest moments, when progress seemed slow or when Noah had setbacks, as all NICU babies inevitably do. There was the week when he struggled with bradycardia episodes, his heart rate dropping unexpectedly. The terrifying day when he needed to be put back on oxygen after catching a mild cold from a staff member. The frustrating period when he seemed to have forgotten how to coordinate sucking and swallowing, requiring the feeding tube to be reinserted. Through each challenge, my new support system rallied around us. David's parents, who lived across the country and had been unable to travel immediately after Noah's birth, finally arrived for a 2-week visit, providing additional help and giving David and me a chance to have dinner outside the hospital for the first time since Noah's birth. My NICU mom friends remained a constant source of comfort, especially as some of their babies began to be discharged. Jessica's daughter went home after 8 weeks with a monitoring plan for her heart condition. Monica's son was transferred to a specialty hospital for his surgery, but was expected to go home afterward. Each success story gave me hope that Noah's turn would come, too. And then there was Jake, who had proven himself to be the best uncle and brother I could have asked for. He had temporarily relocated to Seattle, taking a leave of absence from his job in Chicago to help us navigate this difficult time. He would bring fresh clothes to the hospital for me, handle grocery shopping and meal prep for David, and spend hours at Noah's bedside so David and I could occasionally rest at the same time. "This is what family does," he said simply when I tried to thank him. "We show up for each other, no matter what." It was a profound reminder of what family should be, a stark contrast to what I had experienced from much of my extended family for most of my life. In the crucible of this NICU journey, the true meaning of family was being redefined before my eyes. It had less to do with blood relation and everything to do with who chose to stand beside you when life was at its hardest. As Noah's discharge date began to seem like a real possibility rather than a distant dream, I found myself reflecting on how this experience had transformed me. The woman who had entered the NICU 7 weeks earlier, terrified and overwhelmed, had been replaced by someone stronger, more assertive, and clearer about her priorities. I had learned to advocate fiercely for my child, questioning medical decisions when necessary and insisting on explanations I could understand. I had found the courage to set boundaries with toxic family members, prioritizing Noah's well-being and my own mental health over obligation or tradition. I had discovered reserves of strength I never knew I possessed, enduring weeks of uncertainty and fear without breaking. Most importantly, I had learned that family was something you could choose and create, not merely inherit. The bonds forged in the NICU, with other parents, with compassionate nurses, with my steadfast brother and newly present father, were every bit as real and valuable as any defined by genetics. After 8 weeks and 3 days in the NICU, Noah was finally cleared to come home. At 5 pounds, 2 ounces, he was still tiny compared to full-term babies, but he had met all the criteria for discharge, maintaining his body temperature, feeding consistently by mouth, gaining weight steadily, and breathing without assistance. The morning we prepared to leave the hospital was filled with conflicting emotions. Joy and excitement. Certainly, but also anxiety about caring for him without the constant support of the medical team. The monitors that had tracked his every heartbeat and breath would not be coming home with us, a prospect that was both liberating and terrifying. "You are ready for this," Maria assured me as she helped us gather Noah's things. "You have been training for 8 weeks. You know this baby better than anyone." The NICU staff had prepared us thoroughly, insisting that both David and I demonstrate proficiency in all aspects of Noah's care before discharge would be considered. We had learned infant CPR, how to recognize signs of distress, how to administer the vitamins and iron supplements he would need, and the precise feeding techniques that worked best for him. Still, leaving the safety net of the NICU was daunting. What if something happens? I asked David the night before discharge as we prepared the nursery at home. What if we missed something the monitors would have caught? "Then we'll handle it," he said firmly, assembling the special angled bassinet recommended for Noah's lingering reflux issues. "We have the pediatrician on speed dial. We have our NICU follow-up appointment next week. And we have each other. We can do this, Gianna." His confidence bolstered mine, and by morning, I felt ready to take this next step in our journey. Jake had stayed at our apartment overnight, cleaning and preparing a special welcome home dinner. My father and Eleanor had stocked our refrigerator and pantry with meals for the coming weeks. David had transformed the nursery, adapting it for a preemie's needs rather than the full-term baby we had expected. The bright overhead lights had been replaced with softer lamps to protect Noah's sensitive eyes. A humidifier maintained the optimal moisture level for his still-developing lungs. The baby monitor was the highest-rated model, designed to detect even the slightest changes in breathing patterns. When we finally walked out of the hospital doors, Noah secured in his car seat with special preemie inserts, it felt surreal. The outside world seemed too loud, too bright, too full of potential germs for our fragile baby. David drove home at exactly 5 miles below the speed limit, taking turns with exaggerated slowness, while I sat in the back next to Noah, watching his every breath. Arriving home, we were greeted by a small welcome committee, Jake, my father, and Eleanor, and Lisa, who had gathered with balloons and a banner reading, "Welcome home, Noah." Their excitement was tempered with understanding, keeping their voices low and making sure everyone had used hand sanitizer before we entered the apartment. "We won't stay long," my father promised. "We just wanted to see you get settled in." True to his word, after a brief celebration and a few photos, they left us to adjust to our new reality as a family of 3, at home for the first time. The quiet that descended after their departure was both peaceful and intimidating. For 8 weeks, Noah had been surrounded by the ambient sounds of the NICU, the constant hum of machines and gentle conversations of nurses. Now it was just the 3 of us in our apartment, the ticking of the clock suddenly loud in the silence. "What do we do now?" I asked David half-jokingly as we stood looking down at Noah, sleeping in his bassinet. "Now we live," he said simply, putting his arm around me. "One day at a time." Those first few weeks at home established a new rhythm for our family. Noah still needed to eat every 3 hours, day and night, a schedule that left us exhausted but grateful. Each ounce he gained felt like a victory. Each peaceful sleep cycle was a gift. Each smile, though the doctors insisted they were just reflexes at that age, felt like a personal message of resilience. At 2 months old, despite being only the equivalent of a 2-week-old in adjusted age, Noah was thriving in ways that amazed even his doctors. His development was closely monitored through weekly checkups and the specialized preemie follow-up clinic, but so far, he showed no signs of the long-term complications that often affect babies born so early. It was during this period of adjustment and cautious optimism that we received the invitation to Aunt Betty's welcome home party. She had spent 6 weeks in the hospital and rehabilitation facility after her accident, and the family was gathering to celebrate her return home. "We don't have to go," David said when I showed him the invitation. No one would blame us for staying home with Noah. But I felt it was important to attend, not just to support Aunt Betty, who had become an unexpected ally, but also to redefine my place within the family on my own terms. Plus, Jake had confirmed that Aunt Karen would be there. And while confrontation was not my goal, I needed to establish clear boundaries in person. After consulting with Noah's pediatrician, we made arrangements to attend for a brief period, with strict precautions to protect Noah's still vulnerable immune system. He would stay home with a trusted nurse from the NICU, who occasionally did private care, allowing David and me to attend together. The gathering at Aunt Betty's house was smaller than the typical family events of the past, perhaps because of her still fragile condition. When David and I arrived, we were greeted warmly by most, though I could feel Karen watching from across the room, her expression unreadable. Aunt Betty, seated in a recliner with her legs still in a cast, reached for my hands as soon as I approached. "How is our little warrior?" she asked. I showed her recent photos of Noah, now filling out and looking more like a typical newborn, though still small for his age. "He's amazing," I said proudly. "The doctors are very pleased with his progress." "I can't wait to meet him when he's ready for more visitors," she said, "but only when you say it's time. I've learned my lesson about letting others dictate family relationships." Her pointed glance toward Karen did not go unnoticed by those nearby. The atmosphere in the room shifted slightly, conversations quieting as if in anticipation of confrontation. I had no desire to create drama at an event meant to celebrate Aunt Betty's recovery. But when Karen approached me later as I was getting a drink in the kitchen, I knew the conversation couldn't be avoided. "Your baby looks well," she said stiffly. "I'm glad things worked out." The casual dismissal of the traumatic experience we had endured, the minimization of Noah's fight for survival as something that simply worked out, ignited a calm anger within me. "His name is Noah," I said evenly. "And yes, he is doing well now, despite the fact that he spent the first 2 months of his life in the hospital without the support of his extended family because of your lies." "I think there have been misunderstandings on both sides," she began. "No," I interrupted, keeping my voice low but firm. "There has been deliberate deception on your side, and that is not something I can simply forget. I don't expect an apology because I don't believe you think you did anything wrong. But I want to be very clear about something. You will not have a relationship with my son unless you can acknowledge the harm you caused and make genuine amends." Her face flushed with anger. "You can't keep me from my great nephew. I am family. Being family is not just about blood, Karen. It's about trust, support, and genuine care. You have shown none of those things. So yes, I can and will decide who has a place in Noah's life. And right now, that does not include you." I left her standing in the kitchen, rejoining David in the living room with a newfound sense of peace. Setting that boundary had been necessary, not just for Noah's sake, but for my own healing. As we prepared to leave the gathering early to return to Noah, several family members approached to ask when they might be able to meet him. Instead of making empty promises or avoiding the question, as I might have done in the past, I was straightforward. "We are limiting visitors while his immune system strengthens, but we will be having a small welcome celebration in a few weeks. Those who have supported us during this journey will be invited." The message was clear. Relationships with my family moving forward would be based on actions, not merely family titles. Some understood immediately, nodding in acknowledgement of what had been lost and what needed to be rebuilt. Others seemed confused or hurt, still not fully grasping how their absence during our crisis had affected me. In the months that followed, our family circle slowly expanded to include those who demonstrated genuine interest in Noah's well-being and respect for our boundaries as parents. My father and Eleanor became regular visitors, gradually earning back my trust through consistent presence and support. Jake remained our most devoted family member, eventually moving permanently to Seattle to be closer to us. Aunt Betty, once recovered enough to travel, came to meet Noah in person, bringing with her old photos of my mother that she thought I might want Noah to have someday. It was during her visit that she shared more about the complicated history between my mother and Karen, helping me understand that the roots of Karen's resentment ran deep and had little to do with me personally. It doesn't excuse what she did, Aunt Betty emphasized, but sometimes understanding the why can help with letting go of the anger, even if you never let that person back into your life. She was right. While I maintained the boundary with Karen, refusing to pretend everything was fine for the sake of family harmony, I gradually released the anger I had carried. It was a burden I couldn't afford while raising a child who needed all the positive energy I could provide. Noah's first birthday marked both on his actual birth date and his due date, as is customary for preemies, was a celebration of more than just his life. It was a recognition of the journey we had all taken, of the strength we had discovered, and of the family we had created, not just through birth, but through choice. Looking around at the people gathered in our home, I saw the NICU nurses who had become dear friends, the other preemie parents who had walked the journey alongside us, my brother who had stood by me when others had not, my father who had earned his way back into our lives, and David, my partner through it all, holding our thriving 1-year-old son. This was family, I realized, not the one I had been born into, but the one we had built through crisis and love, through boundaries and forgiveness, through intentional choices about who deserved a place in our sacred circle. The NICU experience had nearly broken me. But in rebuilding myself, I had created something stronger than before. I had learned to trust my instincts, to advocate fiercely for those I loved, and to recognize that sometimes the most painful experiences lead to the most profound growth. Noah would grow up knowing this story someday, not as a tale of family betrayal, but as a testament to resilience and the power of choosing your own path. He would know that he was wanted, fought for, and cherished from his very first breath. He would understand that family is defined not by obligation, but by love in action, by who shows up when it matters most. As I watch him now, taking his tentative first steps, babbling his first words, discovering the world with wonder in his eyes, I am grateful for the difficult journey that brought us here. Without it, I might never have found the courage to create the life and family we truly deserved. Have you ever had to redefine what family means to you? Who showed up for you during your darkest moments, and did they surprise you? Tell me what you think in the comments below. I really want to know. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that they are not alone in their struggles. Thank you for listening to my story. Take care.